Anyone who's visited this channel before have potentially seen my previous video on this show, or at the very least probably heard me mention that I love it. I think it's probably the best thing to come out of the MCU. For as well as it does the superhero elements with its incredible action and battle of good versus evil, the show is really about the characters. It keeps you as on the edge of your seat as the action sequences do because of how investing the character is and just the show overall is. And it's just so personal. And there is no clearer example of that than in Nelson V Murdock.
This city needs me in that mask, Foggy.
I only never needed my friend.
By this point, we've seen Matt charging further into the role of Daredevil, taking up the role of the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. Episode by episode, things escalate to the point the episode prior, Matt takes on Fisk. It's been very well showcased that Matt has major trouble with his morality, and due to this has chosen to keep his lives balanced, or at least try to keep them separate, his nightlife and his lawyer life, in order to keep his humanity and also keep those around him safe. Foggy and Karen are really his anchors to humanity and what keep him from being Fisk. But he found himself further from that anchor due to the rabbit hole he'd gone down for Fisk, and as a result, Foggy finds Matt ripped to shreds in his own home wearing the suit. The episode prior, Speak of the Devil, sees Matt struggling with his faith due to his darker half, with how Fisk has stayed ahead of each step of Matt's plan within the legal system and his darker methods. The dilemma he's found himself in is not too far away from where he finds himself in Season 3, except he's not quite ready to cross that line yet. Here, he feels it's something pure out of necessity and desperation, whereas Season 3, he entirely commits himself to that cause. Hence why, in Season 3, he cuts off Foggy and Karen, whereas here, he's not willing to do so. With Fisk really getting ahead of the curve this episode, and then Miss Cardenas is killed so that Fisk can acquire the building. This absolutely destroys Matt and Foggy and Karen because they were fighting for Miss Cardenas to keep her home.
This my home. We fight. Yes?
Yes. See.
And due to this, Fisk went outside the law and had her killed so that he could just get an automatic win. This gives Matt yet another excuse why he feels like he may have to make an exception to his rule. Right after Foggy presents him with the law firm sign, and maybe there's a bit of hope to pursue Fisk the right way, that hope is shattered and pushes them all that tad further into believing the darker route may be necessary. The entire reason he's at church in this episode is that confliction whether to play the long game to keep his morality. He believes he feels like he's being forced down the path, but in his heart, he's unsure if he's conflicted over wanting to kill him but knowing he can't, or not wanting to and feeling he must. He's led to Nobu, a member of the Hand working with Fisk, where he has an insanely brutal fight with him and he's left for dead. One of the best fights across the series, not that there's any shortage of them. So with episode 10, we open on Matt waking up with freshly sealed wounds from the battle the episode prior. The confusion over what's happened since he crashed back at his apartment, to hear Foggy clearly enraged. This entire episode is dedicated to the breakdown of these two's relationship. It's the breakdown of something that has been so powerful for so many years. And like I say, it's horrendous timing for the both of them. In the episode before, Foggy had that sign made. They were making progress in their lifelong dream to be lawyers and fight the legal battles together, with their morals seemingly lining up for positivity at every curve. But now, with this world-shattering revelation, Foggy's understandably second-guessing everything because it changes everything they've ever been through. We split off through the episode to see Foggy and Matt progression through university and their early stages of work, which not only relates to what we are seeing in the present, but also makes us truly want to see them figure out this situation when we see the state of their relationship really side by side, and just makes everything much more impactful and emotional. And there's a really strong balance of comedy, particularly from Foggy, who is obviously quite a comedic character anyway. He's very wisecracking. To see them having that genuinely fun banter when they were younger, as opposed to the present day, where it's used in a much more emotional sense. The quips that Foggy makes and the more comedic lines he has have such a more gut-wrenching tone to them, which is an absolute testament to Eldon Henson's performance, but also incredible writing and just creative work. And we already see Matt's decisions and the effect of these two's relationship having ripples down to Karen as well. Their friendship is built on the beliefs of pure trust of each other, and to then be in this scenario where anything and everything Matt's ever said or done hasn't been true in opposition to Foggy's complete transparency and love and honesty, you obviously would question how real the relationship is due to how sheerly massive this revelation is, and I love how the tones mirror each other. We also cut to Fisk a lot through the episode. He's in a strange position himself. He's being posed with the threat of the Hand, who obviously become more of an actual focus in Season 2 on the Defenders, but Madame Gao is pressuring Fisk in order to have him as more of an asset for the Hand. Fisk is clearly wrong in his executional methods, but however, where Fisk and Gao's endgame differ is his motivations are at least based in good. He wants what he truly believes is best for the city. He wants to see it thriving, and his motivations really boil down to the same as Matt's. Their methods are crafted through their childhoods, from his experience. He believes this is the only way for him to make a change, similar to how Matt believes his darker half is necessary as the law isn't quite enough. As much as Matt has experienced the roughness of Hell's Kitchen, for Fisk from an incredibly early age, he felt like he'd been shown the only way to make things work is by destroying what causes the harm and building on top of that. They're in very similar positions, and it really upfrontly holds the mirror between both of them, as they're both pressured to deal with the issues at hand, which just so happens that their issues are with each other, which of course led to the ending of the prior episode, but the lack of body found causes concern amongst all parties involved. It draws the parallel between them in how close Matt was willing to take the same action that Fisk does, which causes Foggy even extra concern, and it's an incredibly interesting scenario because we truly understand Matt's perspective, but the fact of it is that Foggy has been lied to since day one. And as Karen tries to reach out, Foggy feels forced to lie, pushing Karen further away from them both and making her feel more isolated, as well as Foggy now compromising his own morals and his own relationships for someone that he's not even sure he actually knows anymore. Matt's circumstance is obviously incredibly unique. With everything that's happened to him, it's entirely understandable why he's communicated the things he has, and especially after establishing a relationship, how do you bring something like this up? These things that sound absolutely insane, but at the same time they are provable, as Matt does in this episode. But obviously it is still extreme. Really, it's undoubtedly Foggy who's in the right here, because he's been led to live an entire lie for such a long time. Due to this, Foggy is obviously doubtful of how close to Fisk Matt is getting. Not in terms of beating him, in terms of method and in terms of approach. Questioning whether it was him who killed the junkie who had killed Cardenas in the previous episode, and Matt feels offended by that, but Foggy is upfront and has to pressure him on it because Foggy doesn't know. And obviously a lot of Foggy's kind of knowledge of the masked man has been through the news and stuff, and obviously that's played a certain way. And this is where Matt confesses and accepts his mistake the prior night, admitting that there was intention deep down to kill Fisk, and that's why he went there. Obviously this darker half goes against a lot of what Matt preaches too, so again, it just breaks even more trust. All this talk about going through the legal system is, you know, a lie, and whilst we understand his perspective, that's not necessarily the issue. I mean, it is an issue, but this episode is focusing on how it's affecting the characters. The next flashback is of them being offered a job, but Matt's innate goodness means he hesitates to get the job because it would mean going against what they both believe is right. It would mean allowing kind of people in the wrong to get away with stuff in order for them to climb in power and get a job. And, you know, obviously being financially comfortable is always a big goal, and you know, that's something you have to think about. Matt wants to make genuine change, and that's where he's different to Fisk. He's not really willing to compromise himself, but obviously that's the big internal battle with Matt. Doesn't want to compromise his morals, but there are times where he feels like maybe he doesn't have a choice. And that's such a key part of this entire show. Matt's internal conflict is really what makes it. That's why he's probably my favourite superhero. But Matt isn't willing to oppose wrong on those who could be considered caught in the crossfire, such as Cardenas. She didn't do a single thing wrong, but Fisk, in his mind, one life for the greater good is worth it, and that's where they differ, and that's how their childhood shaped them in different ways. When Matt detaches himself from his anchors, he moves closer to what he fears. He devotes more time and more of himself to the mask. He loses the balance, and that's what has happened in the last few episodes. He's lost track of that balance. This is a big sign and big pushing point for him to regain that. The 3 seasons of Daredevil structure really well, actually, even though we are getting another series now. Back then, it kind of wrapped up quite nicely. Season 1 being Matt finding that balance, Season 2 starting with him having it, and then slowly the downfall of Daredevil, and then Season 3 is the redemption. The Defenders kind of acts like a part 2 to Season 2 of Daredevil for me.
You look like an asshole.
Your scars.
So Matt and Foggy are clearly sat in his apartment for a long period of time, simply trying to process their current situation, both wanting to see a light at the end of their relationship, but the moral complication of what's going on here is just insane, and the impact on every moment that they've ever shared together. It means that all the time that they have tried to get a hold of Matt, he's just been MIA, as opposed to just being busy. He's been out doing this. All the time he comes back majorly injured. All the times Foggy has lied, Matt's known about it and just played along. So then that brings Foggy to the valid question of how he went from just hearing sirens as a kid to then beating the shit out of people in the street. And this monologue is brilliant. It's so well performed by Charlie Cox, who frankly is just one of the top superhero casting. He's fucking phenomenal. As is really all of this show, to be fair. He tells the story about as his senses developed, he could hear how many sirens there actually were in Hell's Kitchen. He could hear a father abusing his daughter in a building nearby. That alone would be awful to have on you, knowing something's happening and not being able to do anything yourself. So he tries calling child services. He does it the right way, does it the legal way, but they can't do anything because the father hides what he does so well and the mother refused to believe it. So now, if you're going to follow the legal route, Matt now just has to lie there every night hearing this abuse and do nothing about it. And then where does that leave him morally? If he knows something so awful is happening so nearby and he's not doing anything about it, how do you live with yourself? And it also perfectly shows that extreme buildup of anger. It makes that much more understandable growing up here. We see that in the flashback. Matt goes to fucking town on the father and almost has that realization of he's potentially helping. Foggy clocks this too, pushing Matt about the fact he's pursued it for so long to a point where it wasn't just a one-off thing, to the point where he's regularly going out and is a full-blown vigilante. And with the extreme like martial arts that he's showcased, it's not as simple as Matt lays it out. To have the motivation to want to learn to be as brutal as Matt is and to do it as regularly and as well as he does means he has had such an insane period of time training in that way. And so Foggy believes maybe it's more than that. It's an excuse to release his anger, obviously putting it into frame as an addiction, then confronting Matt, mirroring how his methods have gotten so close to Fisk's. Matt has stood his ground the entire episode, but what breaks him is when Foggy brings up the damage it could do to himself and Karen. Whilst Foggy can understand Matt's motivation, he can't the lies. Matt understandably returns with the question of how could you know that you tell me the same thing? The circumstance is very unique, but the sincerity in Foggy's voice really does showcase for sure if Foggy was in those circumstances and had that relationship with Matt, at one point or another, he would have come clean.
I wouldn't have kept this from you, Matt.
You don't know that.
Yeah. I do.
And it's heartbreaking as Foggy makes the decision to leave and Matt is tearing up trying to hold them back.
I only never needed my friend. I wouldn't have kept this from you, Matt. Not from you.
Foggy.
And then I think the perfect flashback follows this, where Matt and Foggy are in a bar, talking about where they hope to be, writing on the napkin at Nelson and Murdock. And this one explicitly, I feel, frames Matt in the wrong. Foggy questions Matt on the cut on his lip, which we saw he got from fighting the father, but Matt just upfront lies, and it's a scene where Foggy is fully pouring his heart and giving his love to Matt and sharing his dreams, and Matt, whilst his love for Foggy is real and care and wants to be friends with him, he's not being 100% honest. There is still a wall that Matt's keeping up there. Matt has never truly been himself with Foggy, whereas Foggy had found his best friend and career partner. It's such an effectively emotional episode and character piece on them both. Comparing this to especially the Marvel shows that have come out since then, we haven't had anywhere near this level of character work in any of them, and in my opinion, from any real comic book related show or film. The episode looks great, as it always does. The kind of The somber colour tones of Matt's apartment look as beautiful as ever. From the blinding early light at the start of the episode as Matt comes back into consciousness, to the sad blues and purples of the breakdown of a relationship at the end. The idea of two characters trying to figure out their relationship and truly wanting to, but not knowing if they can. And this might sound like a really boring episode. If you say it's an episode about two friends trying to figure their shit out, it's going to sound boring. But we have so much going on in the background. We have Karen and Ben discovering Fisk's mother, as well as Fisk becoming under pressure and stuff. There is always something happening. It's paced incredibly well, and this is one of the best episodes of the series in my opinion. I think it's a brilliant character piece. I think it's one of the highlights of all 3 seasons. Some of the best performances from all the cast, and it's a brilliant fucking episode.